Measley here, dreams of Warcraft.
Hey guys, I'm back, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some of the new gold making changes that are coming with patch 8.2. As a quick disclaimer though, since the beta has just come out, there are probably a lot of things that are still yet to be implemented, and everything is still subject to change. Starting with professions, pretty much every profession is receiving a new tier across the board, from gathering mats to consumables to the new crafted gear, which is similar to what they did in patch 7.3 with Argus, but also different in that a lot of the new consumables are actually direct upgrades to the existing ones. So my first piece of advice would be to sell off all of your crafted items before patch 8.2 hits, with the exception of war scrolls and battle flags, which have remained untouched so far. Besides that, it may also be wise not to stock up on too many crafting mats, as there will be at least a new ore and a new herb come patch 8.2. There's also going to be a new fish for cooking. As of now, enchanting mats, cloth, and skins have not received new versions, so it might be more wise to stock up on those instead. On the flip side, it's not going to be as good to stock up on herbs, ore, or fish, and any of the derivatives such as gems and ink, because alchemy, jewel crafting, and cooking are the three professions that are going to be receiving those direct upgrades to the consumables that they can craft. As for the gear crafting professions, it looks like the next tier of the BOE combatants gear is coming. So if you're looking to get into that, you'll again want to stock up on your marks of honor and expulsum. And lastly, before I actually get into each of the profession recipes, the additional ranks to these very recipes will likely be gated behind the new reputations you'll have to do in both mechagon and nazjatar. And with that, let's dive into what new recipes each profession actually received. Starting with our favorite profession, cooking, you'll see that it received a new upgraded food for each secondary stat. The new fish that's going to be used for cooking is called the viper fish, and besides that there might even be some other mechagon associated fish or mats used for cooking. Anyway, like with alchemy and jewel crafting, this entire new tier of food is likely going to render the old tier obsolete. So next, as you can see with alchemy, indeed there's a completely new tier of potions and flasks, with some of the potions having some unique effects, but the flasks being a complete upgrade from the previous set. What's interesting though is that a lot of these new potions and flasks actually require the old ones as materials to craft, in addition to expulsum and hydrocore. But again, this is an early version of the beta, so you can actually expect some of these recipes to change with newer iterations of the PTR. Next up, with blacksmithing, there isn't too much to talk about except for the new tier of crafted BOEs for Season 3, although there is one thing, but I'll get into it a little bit later. Moving on to enchanting next, we first have a new tier of ring enchants, then we have 4 completely new and different weapon enchants, starting with the force multiplier for agility and strength DPS specs, which actually not only has a strength or agility proc, but also gives you a stacking buff of your highest secondary stat. After that we have the machinist brilliance, which is essentially the same thing but with intelligence. And then we have Naga Hide, which is a tank version of this, which procs a primary stat plus an absorption shield. And finally we have Oceanic Restoration, which is the healing version, which gives you intellect and mana regen. And again, as of now, enchanting did not receive any new crafting mats, so it could be wise to stock up on those right now. Moving on to engineering, we finally have a new Blinktron 7000, but we currently don't know what it actually gives. And besides that, we have 2 new wormhole generators and some of the usual BOE combatants gear. Now at first glance there isn't a lot of new stuff for engineering, but when I actually went on to MMO Champion and looked at the full data mine recipe list, I noticed some pretty cool stuff that hopefully will be implemented. If you remember, all the way back in the BFA beta, there was a mount called the Ziwilag ATV that required items crafted by both engineers and blacksmiths to make, but has not yet made it into the game. Well, now it finally looks like those recipes will be coming in patch 8.2, starting with the supercharged engine made by engineers, and the monolite reinforced chassis crafted by blacksmiths. The thing that's weird right now is that the mats required to make each of these items is quite cheap, combined with the fact that there are different ranks for each of these items, don't really fit the description of how we typically craft mounts, but we'll just have to wait and see. Next up, moving on to Inscription, there really isn't too much new stuff to see here, except the new contracts for the new reputations, a couple of new BOE pieces, a new herb to mill and ink to make, and a new Vantus rune. Perhaps the most interesting thing though is what the Vantus rune actually says. According to MMO Champion, instead of saying Vantus rune Azshara's Eternal Palace, which is the name of the new raid, it actually says Vantus rune nazjatar. So I wonder if we're actually going to be able to keep the buff throughout the entire zone, or if the name is merely a placeholder. Coming to our next profession, we have jewel crafting, and as I said before, it actually has an entirely new tier of not just the primary stat gems, but also secondary stat gems. And these likely only come from prospecting the new ore that is going to be introduced in patch 8.2 as well. And finally, there isn't too much to say about both leatherworking and tailoring, as in terms of gold making, both professions have only received the new tier of BOE crafted gear. But besides that, your usual staples like the mount barding, war drums, bags, and battle flags should continue to sell pretty decently. Now let's look at some other miscellaneous potential gold making changes of patch 8.2. First, at our mission tables, we will have new missions, from expansion themed ones likely associated with time walking to holiday themed ones. And looking at each of the quest texts, it seems like they reward each of the respective currencies associated to the events, which could result in some gold to be made. For example, if the time walking missions actually give time warped badges, as there are actually several ways to convert time warp badges into sellable items, as I've actually mentioned in one of my previous videos, which I'll link to in the upper right hand corner in case you're interested. And if the holiday themed missions award holiday currency, they can usually be exchanged for pets to be sold as well. And next up, we have the promised mount equipment, which according to the devs will be crafted by professions, but the recipes have yet to be implemented into the PTR. And I expect these to become a hot commodity going into patch 8.2. Next, we have 4 almost Dark Moon card-esque Highborn themed BOE trinkets, which I expect to drop from the new raid, but that remains to be confirmed as well, so we'll just have to wait. And finally, we actually have a new Strathholm pet battle dungeon coming, so that will obviously come with new pets and rewards for you to collect and sell. And that concludes my sneak peek and preparation tips for patch 8.2 gold making. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more informative videos just like this one. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Peace.